Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this virtual Space Week New York 2026 event. This one focused on analog astronauts and some of their intersections here in New York, some of the really interesting and profoundly important work and experiences that they are going to share with you all today. So we have a really dynamic group of participants. I'm just gonna go through the list generally. I will let them go around and introduce themselves because they're much better at telling their own stories than I am. But we have Maxine Hoover from the Mars Ocean Analogs. We have Elavarasan, who has also participated in a Mars Ocean Analog mission. We have Ambericent Cornett from Cameleco Consulting, who has done work with analog astronauts in her career. We have Dr. Susan Ip-Jewell from MMAARS and AvatarMEDIC. And then we have Priya Abiram from Cornell University. So that is the group of people who are going to be speaking today. Now I will stop talking and we'll kind of go around the room. I think we'll go alphabetically. So Amber, if you want to start first.
Yeah, I can go first, and give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, Patrick. Okay, perfect. All right, so my name is Ambericent Cornett. I am the founder and CEO of Cameleco Consulting. It is a little bit of a niche kind of feel because of my crazy background. So to kind of start off, I have about 23 years, over 23 years of military intelligence and military cyber operations experience. And it kind of bled over into the civilian sector. So I did about 4 years of military intelligence, deployed to Iraq and everything back in 2003 to 2004. And then when I transitioned into the regular civilian sector, my first job out the gate was NASA Johnson Space Center. So I worked at Johnson Space Center for almost 10 years, and I was working with the actual crew members. I did two sides of the coin, where one side I worked for the engineering side. I was a project and program manager after I got promoted, working with things that you know and love, near and dear to you guys, like the Hubble telescope, the Orion missions, the shuttle, the ISS, the rovers and things like that. And then after I got my degree, I transitioned over to space medicine. So I was a space medicine epidemiologist for all the crew members. And I did that for almost 5 years. And then, of course, Ebola and Zika happened. So I went to the CDC to work for a little bit on those pandemics. And after those got knocked out, on and off in military duty for a while. But I found myself into the civilian sector for intelligence operations in the DMV. So I'm actually on travel here to meet with all of you. If you show up for one of the in-person events, I'll be there. But my background is heavy military intelligence, heavy space operations, and heavy NASA, crew members, and the actual flight mission support and things like that. So if you have questions, please give them to me. But I will pass this back over to Patrick.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that introduction. So I think next we're going to get a hello and an introduction from Ilan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ilan. I'm a graduate student at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and I'm specializing in astrobiology and planetary science. And before pursuing my graduate degree, I got my degree in aerospace engineering. And after that, I worked for a year for ISRO on their human space flight mission Gaganyaan. And during that time in India, I also participated in analog missions. One of them was in Ladakh, which is a high altitude, cold desert kind of environment. That was my first analog training in India. And then I moved to the US like around 3 years ago, and I'm pursuing a research here. And I'm specializing on icy moon simulations. So it's a wet lab chemistry experiment, and we are trying to understand biosignatures or signatures of any form of life signatures in solar system. And that's what I'm doing here in Texas. I'll be moving soon to California to pursue a PhD in astrobiology itself. And I participated in an ocean analog with Mars Ocean Analogs, Maxine and Reed, honestly. And That's my second analog, and I've also been part of other analogs as Capcom, doing a remote mission extra. So we can talk in detail about all those things in the panel. And I'm very excited to start it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And you mentioned Maxine, and next we're going to hear from Maxine Hoover at Mars Ocean Analogs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maxine Hoover. I'm Executive Director of Mars Ocean Analogs. Mars Ocean Analogs is currently the only ocean-based analog astronaut program at the moment. What we do is we take crews of space professionals and aspiring analog astronauts out to sea for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. What makes us especially unique is that our program is based on the success of Reed Stowe's longest nonstop sea voyage in history. He spent 1,152 days nonstop out to sea without resupply. And what's so interesting about this is that it's projected to take 2 to 3 years to travel to Mars and back. And it's the only analog run by a person who actually has that firsthand experience out of sight of land, completely isolated. And we've completed 10 missions since 2021. We are currently based in New York, but we've done missions to Palm Beach, North Carolina, the US Virgin Islands. And our mission is that we teach the world what it will actually take to go to Mars. What kind of person will we have to be? We study the psychological human factors of it. Often when you go out to sea, you become a completely different person, and that's what we study. We want to get down to the bare bones of what type of person will it take to actually handle that long duration, high fidelity mission to Mars. And we've collaborated with other analog astronaut programs as well, like MMAARS with Susan Ip-Jewell. We've had Elon as one of our crew members as well. And we're super excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great partnering with you over the last couple of years. And now, Priya.
Hello, everyone. My name is Priya. Thank you, Patrick, for organizing this. And I will be able to turn my camera on in just one moment. My name is Priya. My background is in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Did my undergrad and now doing my master's in aerospace engineering at Cornell. I have had the opportunity to do a couple of projects across industry with NASA, Boeing, Blue Origin, vast across design and systems engineering roles. And in terms of my analog experience, did a lot of stuff with the bioastronautics research space. So have been involved with the design and development of different types of spacesuits. Have also been involved with parabolic flights, was a participant in High Seas, which is an analog out in Hawaii on top of a volcano, and also been a part of a couple underwater analog missions with IIAS.
Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Hopefully you get to settle and turn on your camera whenever you get a chance. No worries there, no rush. We're still going to be here. And then last but certainly not least, Dr. Susan Ip-Jewell. Oh, I think you're on mute. Don't worry, I did it earlier, so if anyone else does it, it's perfectly fine. Sorry.
How about now? Goodness
Perfect.
gracious. Sorry, I'm using my new headset. All right. Thank you so much, Patrick, for inviting me. So I am Dame Commander Dr. Susan Ip-Jewell, and I am the CEO and co-founder of MMAARS, which stands for Mars Moon Astronaut Academy and Research Sciences, and also AvatarMEDIC. So MMAARS is one of the vanguards in the field of analog astronautics. We've been running for nearly 12 years. And we run multi-fidelity and multidisciplinary analog crews, which covers all the areas of the environment. So it's land, air, space, sea, and of course, eventually space. So with that, we have run over 35 missions. We have our low fidelity analog training facility out in Mojave Desert, which is about 15 minutes away from the Mojave Air and Spaceport in California. We are now engaging in expansion into our analog aquanautics, which is, you could see our logo there, starting this year in Florida at the Jules Lodge, and we will be running at full analog simulation missions underwater and the sea at 30 feet, with the near-term vision actually running deeper analog missions with other facilities that will be online in 2027, 2028. But I'm really excited to also, we're not also focused on analog missions. We use the analogs to actually do R&D, research and development in technology, and one of our very exciting projects that we are embarking on is incorporating the AI simulated support crews that will support our analog missions, including our robotics and telemedicine capabilities. So there's a lot that we've been doing, and I'm really excited to be here with the panel and to be able to discuss more of what we do and collaboration. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's great having you here. Just hearing about the wealth of experience. This is one of the most high wattage groups we've been able to pull together this week. So the way this will go is there's a couple of kind of broad general topics that the group discussed ahead of time. I'm just going to kind of put that general topic out there with a couple of prompts and then let the experts kind of share from their experiences and discuss amongst themselves. So the first one, I guess the easiest one, for those perhaps on the call who aren't super familiar and just saw the headline and thought it sounded cool, but what are analog astronauts? Like what are they? What do they do? What goes into being an analog astronaut, whether this is the cost, the physical demands, the psychological demands, what makes a good analog astronaut? You know, what's the screening process? What are the traits, the characteristics that help people thrive on these types of missions? What are the different types of analogs? Obviously, there's the physical domain, like Mars ocean analogs at sea versus those on land, volcanoes, high deserts. There's also different modalities in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. And then what do we learn from analog astronauts? So just kind of around the room, what are analog astronauts in your vaunted experience?
I'll quickly answer that. So for us, analog astronauts are individuals that are entering into a full immersive simulation. They go in as a crew team. They go into what we can call ICE, and it's not the ICE that we all think about. It's actually isolated, confined environment. It could be in different environments, like for us, going up to Nepal, going underwater, going into the desert. So you're working together in full simulation, and you are actually working under the confines and the criteria of astronauts that will, in our case, living on a planetary surface. But of course, you're called analogs because you're not in space, you're not in ultragravity, you're still under the force of 1G. But everything else, what we consider the 4 Ps under MMAARS, is you are now going to be undergoing the challenges of the physical, psychological, physiological, and the sort of the spiritual, we call the overview effect of being in this kind of condition, right? And it really is, for us, we use these analogs as a laboratory out in a real environment versus inside a room. So you are now encountering more authentic experience. It's very experiential. And you'll also be able to, for us, to actually develop and test your ideas, your research, be able to develop, prototype, innovate, iterate, and all these things. But for us also, for MMAARS, I don't know about the other analogs, I would say from the beginning that we started MMAARS, it really is a progressive, advancing training. So So we have our virtual online training, virtuals level 1, 2, and 3. Then you go into our low fidelity, and then you advance into our mid and high fidelity, and so on and so forth. And I'll end on why we call this is important as a training. It's very much modeled on what NASA training is in some way, shape, or form, but it's really about fidelity in terms of the extreme environments that you go into. We consider fidelity to be 2 criteria, very important to consider. 1, fidelity is the risk to life and death. That is our priority. You go into an analog mission and you look at the fidelity. The desert fidelity or something like Heroes inside a warehouse, considered really low fidelity. Why? Because the risk to life and death is pretty low. Not to say it's totally eliminated, but the risk of life and death versus going underwater in hyperbaric pressure or to go to Everest, which is where we're heading, is, pretty dangerous, right? So you've got to be very highly skilled. The second, in terms of the definition of these fidelity missions, is the complexity of the architecture of the mission. Some of these desert missions or these inside Hero, they have, it's not that it's simple, but it's less complex than going, for example, somebody who's training to go under 100 feet, in the inside an underwater habitat and going up to Everest or going to the polar regions. So those, I think, are very important to consider when you're looking at analog astronauts. 1, in how you select your astronaut crew team. 2, what are their training background, their skill set, and so on and so forth, and where are they deploying to?
Excellent. Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, so Susan gave me a really good segue into the NASA-based talk that I would give for this question. So to kind of give a clarification on the differentiation between analog and NASA astronauts. Analog astronauts are basically simulation-based roles versus a flight certified role, which is the NASA astronaut. And for analog astronauts, we are looking at Earth-based environments, whereas the conditions are simulated and postulated, where we look at the theorized situations in space and kind of mimic that whole representation of space. It's low cost, it's low risk, and it is a repeatable experimentation that is done on Earth versus where NASA is a little bit different, where we have an operation to travel to space, an actual real-time decision-making based process that happens in the space-like environment when we go into orbit. We deal with microgravity, we deal with the space conditions, we deal with high cost, high risk, and limited frequency when it comes to reactability for analog missions. So you can rerun an analog mission over and over and over again. The cost is habitually the same. But when you deal with NASA, it's a little bit of a different situation because you deal with when we flew with the Russians, when we flew with SpaceX, and now we have the Artemis 2. So those price differentiations vary so significantly that have drawn the different attitudes towards the funding and criteria of that type of thing, along with all of the congressional issues we have when we do spaceflight and they're so forth, whatever. So so basically simplicity is test and prepare is analog versus your actual execution and your operations in real life space scenarios.
Thank you for that. I don't know, Maxine, Ilan, Priya, if you want to jump in on the what is an analog astronaut.
I think I'd like to add a few points to Dr. Susan's and Amber's. Nice starting for what analog astronautics is. So it's there in the word itself. It's an analog for doing astronaut training, but we do it here on Earth. And like Amber mentioned, sometimes it's low risk, but there's also high fidelity missions where there is some kind of extreme environment training that is that's actually provided for the candidates. So it's mimicking the astronaut training, but in different levels of extremities. So the basic concept here is that you put yourself into certain simulations that's gonna mimic the space travel or space flight training. And it's basically to come out of your comfort zone, because when you do all this space flight, it's beyond, it's going beyond Earth, and it's going beyond your comfort zone. So to simulate that, there are so many different categories, and not everyone can join a NASA mission. So that's why there are firms around the world that do this for you at different levels. So these are equally important to space agency astronaut trainings, I would say, from my own experience. So at the end of an astronaut training, we are gaining a part of resilience and preparation, and also physical training that's equivalent to an actual astronaut training. And we can assist in the future astronaut missions in so many ways, honestly, and it's picking up right now. And from my point of view, I can contribute towards what gets you into a private astronaut training is that you have a good profile, like a varied profile. Anyone I met here in the analog astronaut community, like this panel, we come from varied background. And I believe that's very important for space exploration. And one of the platform that's giving us right now is the analog astronaut community. And so, yeah, everyone's valid over here. And that's one more important point to contribute your skills here. You are important too. So that's my point.
Excellent. Priya or Maxine, feel free to go ahead and jump in.
Yeah. So yeah, basically mirroring what Susan, Amber, and Elon said, yeah, an analog is an Earth-based environment that simulates the space stressors, isolation, confinement, resource scarcity. In our case, we're in the open ocean, which is, you know, that creates this unpredictable environment. And basically, it gives these analog astronauts firsthand experience of how they actually you know, it's so interesting because we'll take some people out who are so eager to go, but then once the mission is actually fully underway, you really see how people change, how they can become stressed out over small things or large things. You know, some things are significantly stressful situations. If a wave crashes over you, or, you know, we're not sure if the timing is, if we're not going to get to our destination in the time that we expect. These are small, but sometimes not so small, significant stressors that can really impact crew dynamics, impact behavior. And that's really our focus. But I think this is a very important thing to look into when studying, who are actually going to be going into a space capsule. You know, I mean, if they can't go on a boat in the middle of the ocean together, can they survive a space capsule for months to several years, specifically on a Mars trip, which is supposed to be multiple years. So yeah, and each analog all over, you know, obviously ours is ocean, but then they have different analogs that have other focuses where they have a bit more hard science involved, environmentally, appropriate. So we focus on the human factors.
I'd like to add an extra layer to this, I think, that is critically important. Well, my background is in medicine, obviously, and I've transitioned into space medicine. So from the very start of us forming MMAARS and then all the subsequent missions, is that we are very critical in developing and ensuring we train our crews in medical capabilities, right? That is really, for us, the motto is, safety first, simulation second. That is critical for us, right? Even if we're going into the desert, low fidelity, and as I said, low risk of life and death, right? To life and death. It's still important that you train your crews in the medical capability, the basic skills. So in our training program, nobody comes in to any of our in-person mission unless they've gone through our virtual level training 1, 2, and 3. Because during those levels, during the virtual training, you literally are replicating and you're experiencing virtually online. We divide you into virtual crews. And you learn all the skill sets, which is important, before you come in to our missions. So you learn not only these medical skills, basic life support, first aid, so on and so forth, how to do triaging, how to do CPR. You are now also going to learn about the architecture of our missions. So when you come into the mission, I think, and I've done over 35 missions myself, in the very early days, went into other analogs before we formed MMAARS. And from that, I'd learned what was missing and what was real challenging And the challenge, I think, if you are a beginner going into an analog mission, I'm talking from my own experience, and you have no one to give you onboarding procedures, no one to telling you what you are expected to experience, and you go in blind and having all these assumptions, it's going to be very, very challenging on those, what I've said, the 4 Ps, right? Physically, it's challenging because you have no idea what you're going into. Psychologically and physiologically, it's really, really, really difficult. So for us, from my experience over the years, we have obviously iterated our program, is that we absolutely give you the whole architecture of what you're expected to encounter, what you're expected to do, and train you in those aspects. I think it's very much aligned with training, NASA astronauts or space government astronauts, but obviously that's more detailed and so on and so forth, and they're literally going into space, right? But I think that's critical. The medical component, the human factors, we already know that's always there, but the medical capabilities, understanding what you are going to be encountering. If you are encountering a medical situation, which we have already multiple times, in even our low fidelity, but definitely when we went to Nepal, high altitude, 15,000 feet Everest, what are you going to do if you don't have a medical trained person in your crew team? What are your decision making? I think that's really critical to really emphasize.
I second that. I've been part of the virtual training of MMAARS, so I know Dr. Susan what she's telling about. So we do get trained in CPR and triaging and etc. It's very important to have a medically trained person in your crews, and also train yourself how to behave in high stress situations, which most of the situations are going to be. So when you are in an analog, you don't know what's going to break down any time. So all of your skills will come in handy at that time. And having a medically trained crew is one of them. But the analog astronaut training also tests your capabilities, like how good you are at decision making at high stress environments. So yeah, so that's one more important skill as well.
I think also, let me just quickly add, is that it's important as an analog, and I'm sure a lot of the other analogs have there, is your remote team, right? It's not just your remote mission support team. I mean, they're there and it's important. They're like the conduit between the remote teams and the crew, but you have to have the other remote teams. So for MMAARS, we have literally remote medical team, remote psychological team, remote scientific team, and lots of remote teams that are all converging to support the crew team itself. Right. But I think this is very important, and I've seen it over the years. What I feel that there needs to be some kind of agreement that you don't cosplay. You don't cosplay. What do I mean by cosplay? And I've seen it in all these other analog missions, the low fidelity, where people come in and they say they're a crew medical officer and they have absolutely no medical training, or they're crew psychological and they have no training. They just give themselves these arbitrary labels in the crew mission, and then they don't have the full remote team support. That to me is cosplay. I think that you need to be authentic, and that's what we do under MMAARS, is that every role that we give the crew team or the remote team is that they have the actual expertise, they have the skill set, they have the knowledge, and they're not cosplaying. I think the authenticity to be able to get analog astronautics as a real accepted field, which is kind of what my goal is from the beginning 15 years ago, is to make it as close as one could be to be authentic and not space camp. I mean, there is a place for space camps, obviously, for young kids, but for what I'm trying to establish is to have analog astronautics as a real training field, right, and be accepted by NASA, by the space agency, by the academics, and so on and so forth. That I think is really important. So when I see people giving them roles and they're cosplaying, I really feel like, oh, that is not a good place to go forward with.
And I also want to mention, as you said, Susan, working with MMAARS as a remote psych and medical team was incredibly beneficial, and it added so much to some of our missions, especially in the winter, when there was that unknown of how our crew would handle these cold to summer environments. We went from New York to St. Thomas in the middle of December, which was a big one. That was a very big change, and all our crew had not gone out for that amount of time in the past. And then you also assisted us remotely with our Atlantic voyage in and out of the Atlantic Ocean to and from New York City. And it really added so much. Obviously, you know, it is very important to have that remote medical insight team, especially when we're studying the psychological effects, not just for data collection, but also to have it makes it a complete analog. If you don't have that, then there's a critical piece missing.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with what you said, and having your support really helped our analogs as well.
But not only that, and Maxine was great, but it's important that you're going to have legal consequences.
Yeah,
You have
absolutely.
legal consequences if someone is severely injured or they die in your mission.
Yeah,
So the ethical aspect of analogs and the safety aspect and the legal aspect of
Mhm.
running analogs is critically important as a real basic foundation of when you build analogs. And that is something that would be number one, because, you know, I think we are one of the only for-profit, you know, we're actually entrepreneurs, and we are not only scientists and researchers, but we are scaling as a business entrepreneur using analog astronautics. So from that context, from day one, we have always really been cognizant about the legal aspects of running analogs. So that is something that you need to always consider when you're having a crew, because you're working with humans. And then for us, that's why over the years, we've implemented all the technologies. So in our upcoming mission, we'll have our whole research that we've been working on is the agentic AIs that will support the crew, but also bringing in humanoid autonomous robot that will be joining our missions. See, and so all these things you have to be serious to think about when you're joining one. If you're considering joining an analog mission, consider those factors. Very important. Safety, and also what is the legal aspects, you know, that they've incorporated to take care of you if you got injured. Like for us, we will not take anybody that has no prior training in our programs, right? And two, that you have medical support, because if you're injured, like when we went to Nepal at 15,000 feet, we literally had a medical emergency, but we had real flight surgeons, not playing around flight surgeons that are part of a remote team, just like NASA, they have flight surgeons. We have real flight surgeons. We had medical doctors in our crew. We were able, because they were heavily trained, you know, in how to evacuate the person in the crew, right? So these are things for you, if you want to join an analog mission, whether it's low, mid, high, whatever, to consider, right? Really do your research on that organization before you join.
Really, really important point. I didn't know, Priya, if you had any thoughts on this kind of intro question as to what is an analog astronaut. I already have like 45 follow-ups in my head that I've just had to kind of like set to the side, and just we'll revisit them in the future. But I wanted to give Priya a chance now that she's settled to jump in on the beginning.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to repeat the things that have already been mentioned, because there has been a lot of incredible stuff mentioned. I will also say, like, a lot of people ask why analogs and like why spend so much time, maybe even personal money and resources and time off from other stuff to like go participate, or like what's the importance of this? And one thing that I kind of like to emphasize is, like, in the space industry, both to engineers and non-engineers, whenever we build like technology, we build rockets, satellites, space stations, whatever we build, everything is designed and then tested a million times, and often tested to failure a million times before it's actually space certified and sent to space. And so an analog astronaut mission is that same testing and certification process for humans, because it's not just important that we test our hardware before we send to space. It's also important we test our humans, and it's important while we test our humans for the humans to know what are their personal failure points, what are their max limits and tolerances in different environments, what are their max capabilities, what's their endurance, what are their limitations. And I think it's about putting ourselves in these extreme environments, but also understanding what are our different symptoms that we face when we come across different conditions in these extreme environments. I've been in hypoxic chambers, hypobaric chambers. I've been in chambers where I'm like exposed to very little oxygen and etc. And every single person in my crew reacted very differently in terms of their bodily symptoms, of like one person feeling a strong sense of euphoria during decompression, another person whose face turns blue, another person who becomes really sleepy. And so everyone's symptoms to different medical conditions is extremely different. And those are our body's natural ways of saying something is off and something is wrong. And so being in these extreme environments and knowing what your natural bodily triggers are telling you like something is off is important to be able to recognize and understand so that you are able to test real emergencies, whether it be during these analog missions or even during space missions, and understand real, emergencies.
Awesome. And then thank you. I know Dr. Ip-Jewell's been posting links in the chat. If any of the other panelists have links to their websites or other interesting things, feel free to put those in the chat. I think the last couple of points actually meshed really well with the second area we kind of want to get into, which is getting involved and kind of busting myths. You know, it's not, these aren't vacations, you know, these aren't, excursions, it's not play, or anything like that. So how do people get involved, and not just get involved, but how do you get involved the right way? How do people become good analog astronauts? What leads to success versus failure? Are there different mindsets or things that come up repeatedly when you see someone who struggles or fails? What are those commonalities and why people aren't able to pursue this process versus those that are? What are the traits that almost across the board lead to productive analog astronauts? And then that ultimate analog, I guess, what would be if you could design, no cost, no restrictions, if you could design a perfect, analog, the ultimate analog experience, what would it be? And then just kind of, those benefits, the impacts, that this is real, this isn't play. So that's kind of the second area, which is the getting involved and busting myths. How do you become a good analog astronaut, and why does it matter?
Shall I quickly start?
Go ahead.
Okay, that's a really good question. The first thing you have to consider is what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? What do you want from this? It does not have to apply just to analog astronautics, but yourself. So we always ask, what is your MTP? I didn't coin this, by the way. Dr. Peter Diamandis came up with this, and he's the founder of X Prize, Singularity University, ISU. So what's your MTP? What do I mean by MTP? The question is, what is your massive transformative purpose for you to do anything? What is your passion? What drives you, right? Is analog astronautics, do you want to be an astronaut? Do you want to be a researcher, a scientist? Do you want to be an innovator, a pioneer? What is your MTP? So you come into our program, the Virtual Level 1, we try to find that for you. Well, we give you the opportunity to at least, investigate that, the curiosity. But if you already know what your MTP is, well, great for you, because now you can start your path, right? So then you can develop your blueprint path of your life's journey, how to get to that North Star where you want to go. That's your guide, right? So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is very important is determine what kind of analogs you want to go into. For us and Mars, you cannot go to Everest or underwater. You haven't even done our Virtual Level 1, right? So one of the important I've seen over the years is there are opportunities, but the opportunities are different. One is a pay to play. What's pay to play? What do I mean by that? It means that you cannot join a mission unless you pay for it. I think there is positive and negative to that. There really is. So you have to consider, do you want to pay to play in an analog mission? And if you do, you have to really list the pros and cons of that. What is it that you're going to get out of it? Does it align with your NTP? Or you're just going there just because you're curious? So there's pros and cons. Pay to play. Now, there are other analogs like HERA, which is NASA HERA, and with MMAARS, we have grants that pay for the participants. But under those conditions, you have to have the skill sets. You've got to be, knowledgeable to be able to pass the selection criteria. So it's a higher level of how you get selected versus the pay to play, which is usually the lower analogs, right? So those are things that I think that you really need to consider before you even want to join, whether you pay out of your own pocket, which, it's not cheap, or you're going to apply to a research analog like our underwater and some of our low, because we pay you like NASA HERA or NASA CHAPIR or the MV Lab, which is under ESA, right, which is their analog. They pay you. You are a subject. You are a participant because you're going to go to actually conduct the research they have on board, that you have to participate because you're getting paid for that. So there are lots of different things to consider to join an analog. You've got to do your research. You've got to say, what do I want from this? What do I want to, achieve? Do I want to do my research, or do I want to learn? Or do I want to just go into analog because I want that experience and put it on my resume? Or do I want to actually build on something? Is this my career path, right? There's a lot, but hopefully that helps.
Very.
I can actually take a different random dive into more of a complex technology kind of robustness behind this question. So first, I want to kind of point out that one of the myths that I've seen recently has been that technology alone will actually solve like a space mission risk. We see a lot of things like the chats and the Anthropics and things like that, and we think that they're going to help us, depict a solution that will be the most optimal solution to solve any problem that we may have. But human factors are like very different because they're the weakest and the most complex variable that we have in human spaceflight. And that includes like the fatigue behind it all, the decision-making process and things like that in a high-risk environment, especially, and then interpersonal conflicts. Like everybody's not going to get along with everybody. Everybody's not going to make that mission stick, but you have to learn how to take your personal feelings and compartmentalize and then fix the mission, complete the mission. And so ultimately the human space system, or the human system itself, is critical as a technical system because it's far less predictable. So as far as like the biggest myth that I see in a technical challenge, it's actually a human systems challenge, where your analog missions are supposed to tell you what you're going to learn in advance so that you can preemptively predict things that are going to happen in space mission. And so that's why we do a lot of the analog missions themselves, to kind of create that predictive modeling so that we can have a most high probability of a success rate versus we're going to go in with like a 99 or 95%. We want as close to 100% positivity as outcome as we can possibly reach. And one of those things that, technology could fix that whole situation is a little bit of a myth. I have one more myth that I kind of thought of before I got on this call, is that analog missions are less important than real missions. Me working from the NASA perspective, I've had nothing but the NASA experience. I have not had my own analog crew member support team. I haven't supported a team like that. All the epidemiological space interactions have been straight crew member, actual like NASA astronauts, hired government employees going to space, Artemis missions, etc. And those types of elite level astronauts have difference in, you know, the situations that you would have on Earth. Like your immunity will change, your circadian rhythm will change, your bone density will change, your muscle mass will be deteriorating and possibly significantly lost depending on how, you know, fragrant you are with exercising. Psychological stress plays a big factor in a lot of the deterioration of your whole body composition in itself. So when you look at the health and like the whole situation of, you know, the mass multitude of all of the crew members that have gone through, you know, ISS, Orion, Shuttle, Mir, all those guys, they all have a significant change in their they vary. They have a significant change in the dynamics of spaceflight versus an analog mission where this is controlled. We know that the atmospheric pressure is going to be, we know what oxygen we're going to have, we know what food supplies we're going to have, we plan for those things. But that's not always the case when you go into a mission. What you go up there with, what you have on hand is what you have on hand. There's very seldom rescue missions. I don't know if you've seen the rescue mission, but one of the crew members had to get a rescue mission recently, and he finally put it out that, you know, there was a severe, I think he had a cardiac situation, but there was something so severe that they thought to bring this crew member back. One of the other issues that I've seen, and I was actually on deck for this, was that one of the mission support crew members actually had a situation where they were going to contaminate the entire ISS in itself. And so that, explicitly, like that was a thing that we had to go back and get that person. That was an extremely expensive mission. It was an extremely last minute mission. And those types of things are telltale signs that we don't really predict when we're doing analog missions. What's the rescue factor behind it? And so I think that, you know, working these analog missions is one of those things that kind of add on to the composition of success when we do actual real life missions, because they tell all the signs that we can possibly predict in a safe environment versus going into an environment where we have no aptitude to grab these people and just bring them back to Earth without millions of dollars in reconstructive ordnance and all these other variances that come into play when we have to go and rescue a teammate. So I think that's the other mission that I kind of wanted to point, or the other myth that I want to kind of to bust is, you know, the health issue can be literally an impact of an entire crew. And that's where epidemiology and space medicine becomes so critical in these alignments.
Oh, I want to add on to that. Thank you so much for saying that. I think that's important. But I think that's where the extreme analog environments, analog, missions that that are conducted. For example, even with NASA doing the Antarctic missions, and also we've gone up to 15,000 feet going under hyperbaric. Is that part of that? I'm not talking about these low fidelity, desert missions. I'm talking about really extreme environments on Earth that are simulations of, of these possible challenges, like you say, evacuation, right? Is to be able to develop those protocols and SOPs, standard operation procedures, under these simulation analogs, under these extreme environments, to then be able to say, okay, these are protocols that we can design because we're running, conducting, and yes, but even still, when you go to Antarctica, 8 months, you're cut off. So if there's a medical emergency, by the way, we worked with the Antarctic medical team back in 2014 doing telesurgery, doing teleanesthesia, telerobotics. So the point is, I think when you are also using these analogs in extreme environment settings, that's what I'm saying, right? Then you are able to look at developing the countermeasures, the mitigation countermeasures, the procedures to be able to do the evacuation. I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. It's very hard to be able to evacuate this recent one. By the way, I think he lost 20 minutes of his voice. For some reason, he wasn't able to communicate. So my understanding was from what he said, right? Mike Finke, who was the astronaut that got evacuated, was really interesting, but apparently lost 20 minutes of his voice. For some reason, they couldn't figure out, they still can't figure out the source of that even now. But I understand absolutely, right? How do you evacuate from the ISS? Took them several months because it wasn't a medical emergency per se. He didn't have a cardiac attack, right? A heart attack right there, or a real life-threatening emergency. My question is then, right? This is where analogs come in extreme environments. If the astronaut on the ISS literally had a life-threatening emergency, what are they going to do? They can't evacuate for sure, right? But what are their capabilities to be able to provide that medical intervention right there and then to save the astronaut's life? So where I'm going with this is these extreme analogs that we do on Earth has some real benefits in terms of the technology, like telerobotics, telesurgery, or developing the evacuation, even from even though it's on Earth, right? Earth. But I do think that is important to consider.
And I wanted to point out, it's on a very basic level. I mean, it also goes in line with what you, Susan and Amber have mentioned. I think it all ties also back to harmony, crew harmony, and also harmony with the external teams, so that everybody is in the same loop of communication. Everything is flowing in the same direction. And when it comes to what makes a good analog astronaut, at a very core level, it's who can actually do the mission. Who can actually take commands from a captain? Who can actually show up when they're supposed to show up? Who can actually sit and do a watch for several hours when they're assigned? Who can do their daily duties? I mean, it's really surprising how a lot of people will maybe say, yes, I want to do this mission, so I'm going to say this stuff, but then are you actually going to follow through and show up? And are you also going to be honest about your own capabilities and limitations? And not try to get around that for the sake of being accepted into this analog, and then not be able to give your all for the betterment of the crew and the external team. So that's something I wanted to point out as well.
That's so important because honesty is important, but do you get absolute honesty? When you know that if you are absolutely, especially in the medical psych issue, right? If you're absolutely honest about everything, you might get eliminated. So then you have to then decide ethically, morally, right? And your own, credential and your own identity is, but if I am absolutely honest about myself on everything in this questionnaire, in this selection, I could one, jeopardize my selection into the mission, and two, jeopardize my career in this field, right? So over the years, I think that's so important that you bring that up. Over the years, what we've developed and designed is our selection criteria, which is pretty high level. But one of them very important is not just a psychological profile. We go into deeper dive into who you are, what have you done, who your epigenetics, your genetics, your biopsychosocial profile is part of our selection. Then we look at going through our virtual level. We get to see how you perform virtually with other people, how you communicate, blah, blah, blah. But then we take all that. This is before we select you to in-person mission, is then we look at the mix. We look at all the potential individuals we want to select into our missions based on all these other criteria, based on all the evaluation assessment we've done with you through our program. Then we look at the crew mix. The crew mix is so important. The dynamics, the personality, the character traits, their skill set, the knowledge, all this comes into how we select to come into our missions. And that is, I think, is important. I think that's really missing in a lot of these other analogs.
Those are great points, and I'd love to add to those points. When Susan or Maxine mentioned, the crew dynamics is very important. Sometimes people don't know about themselves, honestly. And these kind of analog environments, they challenge people to know more about themselves. And Captain Reedstow always tells, you never know what a person is going to bring on this crew. They can change any possible ways. And I've seen it in person when I went on the winter analog training with MOA, and ocean is a very unpredictable situation. We all know that it's very extreme and it can make or break a human being. And I saw it in real time. So that's how a space flight is going to be as well. So how are you going to react in those time periods? Are you an adaptive person? Are you ready to challenge yourself? Are you a disciplined person? So these are the traits that the analog environments actually test. But if you don't know that about yourself, there are so many opportunities in this field that you can dip your toes in and you can see whether that's useful for you, or will you be able to go forward with this? Like Susan mentioned, there is this MTP, like what's your motive to do all these things? So everyone in this field, analog astronautic field that I've come in contact with, they have a purpose in their mind. They want to contribute to the elevation or expansion of human space flight. So that's their motive. And if you have one, and if you want to contribute your skills to this field, so we need to think about that as well as in the questionnaire. And this is where the crew selection points come, but that's not to scare anyone that you can't get into an analog astronautic training. No, there are so many other opportunities which you can test your capabilities before, like being a Capcom or a remote mission team, knowing more about these things. There are virtual trainings as well. MMAARS gives out virtual trainings. And yeah, we can do all those things, test our capabilities. And then if you want to go ahead, we can. It's just how adaptive as you are as a human being. Are you ready to change for these things? And those are some of the traits I would say. And yeah, when it comes to crew dynamics, this is more important for life in general. We're going to meet different types of people. And imagine, put yourself in an extreme environment, like this is a life or death kind of an extreme environment. How are you going to make a decision for yourself that is depending the lives of others? So this is one of the important things that we would train in an analog environment. So there will always be cultural differences, ethnic differences, and also how a certain thing is affecting the crew. So you just have to be upfront, being able to change yourself and for the betterment of the crew and for yourself as well. So there's so many things. It's a very challenging, but also very interesting field to get involved with, I would say.
I just wanted to know real quick, we're going to keep going, but for everyone who didn't see the message in the chat, we have hit the 2 o'clock hour. We're going to keep going. This is a fantastic conversation. We'll go for as long as people want to talk or have questions. I just wanted to note that because we did tip past the 2 o'clock hour. I think Priya did have to drop, so it is just the four of you now. But I just wanted to hop in with that housekeeping note. Amber, go ahead. And then I think the next area, I don't know if you guys want to kind of transition from here, but is looking kind of at the future. So, the impact of, AI, how is that going to change how analogs conduct their missions, new technologies, and things like that. Challenges and barriers. I know in some of our planning meeting, we had a really interesting conversation about, the role that New York can play, broader conversations about, standardization within the analog community. How is that moving? What role can New York play in that? So I just wanted to throw that one out there while I already had the mic. And now I'm going to go away again.
Thank you so much. Let me ask.
It's okay. So you want to go first, Susan, or you
quick,
because I was going to answer the piece of information, but I'll let you go. So then I'll go back on the other piece.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to go back. I want to add a little bit about the going into an analog mission too. Is very important. After all these years, we've done, many analogs, many environments. But what even myself, actually seen this, I've experienced myself. One of the things you have to be aware of when you go into an analog mission is it actually magnifies your deficiencies or your fears. It really does. And that is something you have to be honest with yourself before you join a mission, especially obviously the more higher fidelity ones, is look into the mirror and say, what are my fears? What are my insecurities? Because I will say to everyone here, including myself, which is a good thing in a way, because when you go into an analog mission, you are forced to face your fears. And in those isolated, confined environments, especially in the extreme, you really are going to be challenging your fears. Those insecurities and fears are going to be magnified. And so the benefit of that is, and it's very much part of the analog experience, is the inner space journey. You literally learn to transform from your own experiential learning in these analog experiences, missions, is you learn a little bit more about yourself. You come out of it, I'm going to say, you could come out of it with PTSD, post-traumatic issues. Then you have to deal with that. But then those issues were already there. They either were suppressed or repressed, or suppressed, and you didn't acknowledge it, or you didn't even know it was there until you went to a mission and it was magnified and you have to deal with it. So you have to deal with it during the mission. So you better have the capabilities to be able to deal with it. And then you have to deal with it after the mission, right? So that's something I think everyone sort of you forget about or don't even talk about. Is after all these years of doing these analogs, right, is that it magnifies your insecurities and your fears. So before you even decide to go into analog mission, you better look into the mirror and ask yourself, do I want to address this? Do I know I have these issues, right? So for example, the underwater analogs is I'm scared of water because I'm scared of asphyxiation, of dying, of drowning because of my asthma when I was a kid. So I have to ask myself, do I want to go into an underwater analog with the possibility that I can drown because I'm going to panic when I do a dive, or I'm going to be underwater for X number of days or weeks? How am I going to overcome that? I'm just giving you an example, But for me is I have over the years, I push myself in a positive way. I know my limitations. So I'm giving you my own experiences. Know your limitations, know how far you want to go. If you know you're limited, go and say, do I want to go further? And if I do, what is it that I need to acquire? The knowledge, the skills, whatever it is, to be able to say, okay, I feel like I've fulfilled that aspect, I will go ahead, right? That's who I am. Or I'm going to be honest with yourself. I don't think I can go there because I'm going to put not only myself in danger, but the other people in the crew. So you have to be, the honesty part is something that is very much part of the inner space journey that we also train you in. So it's not all about the technology and the mission and being, it's about who you are. Fundamentally is if you don't know who you are, how can you put yourself in a dangerous environment or an unknown environment and be able to face the challenges? So I think fundamentally is know who you are first, and I think these analogs is something I think it gives you that ability to transform yourself from the experiences, whether it's low, it doesn't matter the analog that you're going to. I think at the end of the day, you come out, you learn a little bit more about yourself. Okay, so I want to stop here and let you talk.
Yeah, no.
And,
hop back to Amber, and then we'll head into the final segment about the future.
Yeah, so I was going to kind of address the whole, psychological and physical barriers that people may address in their own personal selves. So I mentioned that I have 23 years of military experience. And when I joined the service, I was 17 years old. Coming straight out of high school, you have no idea what you're up against. And then you go to 9 weeks of basic training, and now they've literally reformed your entire psyche and your whole physical form. And then you come out this super soldier, right? When you're going through this basic training phase, you're literally being broken down to your bare bones self. When I was in high school, I was full on ballet. I was in point shoes. I was 98 pounds. I had to drink almost a gallon of water to just make weight so that I could join the service. And then when I got through basic training and through all the advanced, individual training and deployed, I was 117 pounds. That is not my weight today. And I will not share what that is actually, but I will say that it did really transform and psychologically it made me reevaluate myself as a person. I didn't think that I would go from a dancer to military, especially since that was not my original goal. My original goal was go medical school. But happen chance, I ended up in the service, and today I really value the actual opportunities I've had to get this far. And so to kind of segue into the question about, you know, the emerging technologies and things like that. Like right now, I'm in the middle of a dissertation for quantum tech, right? I am big in AI, ML, and all the LLMs and things like that. And this probably will seem a little foreign to people that want to go into astronaut and crew member stuff. But at the end of the day, we are being hypnotized by the new AI protocols, the new technology that's coming out, all of these things, the chats, the Anthropics, the Palantirs, things like that. And if you have a fear of incorporating them into your daily lives, think about the defense organizations. I work for the Department of Defense, right? And in the Department of Defense, we have fully encased it into some of the opportunities that we deal with on a daily basis in the DMV. So when you look at how can we incorporate this into the structure for analog and regular crew missions for the NASA astronauts, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's already been incorporated. It just wasn't as highly of an anticipated name as like AI or quantum tech or anything like that. Those buzzwords came into fruition like more recently, but we've always used some type of like hyper intuitive, you know, cognitive relative like technology to help us significantly like progress in space flight and space opportunities at large. So it's not something that is going to be super, you know, changing. It's just going to modify and exemplify what we're doing today in space and space operations. It's going to make us more agile. It's going to increase conductivity, and we're literally going to see like a mechanism of change that puts into a perspective a different way of associating cybersecurity and technology into space flight. And to kind of like segue for that, if anybody is into like space optics or like satellite comms or things like that, a lot of the CubeSat missions that we run with those satellite orbiting space right now, like all those constellations that are out there from Starlink or who else has Amazon. They have these big constellations around the earth right now. We've been involved in this stuff for years. We just didn't really have a name and a face to it, but now we do. So when we start thinking about how we're going to incorporate emerging technology into space operations, it's been there. It's just evolving, and it's building itself on itself to kind of embrace and like reinvigorate the way that we deal with space operations as a whole. So I honestly think from the cybersecurity and technology side, that is going to be a big namespace, because we have to adhere to like the, you know, the dissidence of issues with like any kind of apprehending our space, you know, protocols or messing with rovers. That was another thing that like in another talk I've had to talk about, like any kind of arbitrary like absence of NASA versus a Russian probe that gets into your space ordinance, and now it's controlling your mission and you've lost millions of dollars worth of equipment. So like these things have happened. Like NASA has lost millions of dollars worth of like equipment and things like that, research details, terabytes worth of information. And these are one of the things that like now it's starting to rear its head and show its face in space, in the space, you know, in the space ordinance as a whole. So now it's been there already. I think evolving in this magnitude is going to be one of the things that we want to watch for. But if you're into tech, if you're into like IT and cyber and things like that, and you want to talk offline about those types of subjects, definitely get with me. But it's just going to magnify 10-fold, 20-fold, 100-fold, and it's going to make our missions a lot more probable and acceptable versus what we do trying to do these extended analog missions without any kind of connectivity to any kind of cybersecurity elements or any kind of IT elements. So yeah, look out, Maxine. We're gonna put some stuff on your boots.
Can I expand on that?
I want to hop in just real quick as we head to the quarter after mark. So I think we'll run this to 2:30. I think that'll give us an hour and a half. I'd like to give Maxine and Ilan a chance to talk about the next topics that we have here. So you know, the future of analogs, and then we'll do a round robin, all for a chance for final thoughts, notes that you want to put out there. If anyone on the call has questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. If we have time after everyone does their final thoughts, we could take a live question or two from the audience. But I just wanted to do some housekeeping as we hit the quarter after mark.
Can I quickly expand on the research side and so on?
I'd like to give Maxine and Ilan a chance to hop into the conversation flow for a second, and then we could do an expansion afterwards.
Sure.
Your dive into the ocean.
Yeah. So on the future of analogs, I mean, we love to, as Mars Ocean Analogs, we love to take a collaborative approach. We're always open to new ways that we can collect data, experiment, bring people with different skill sets within the space industry out to see how we can collaborate and expand on what we can all learn from each other, and also what we can bring back to the space community. I know that there's a lot of, obviously, the other analogs are based in all of these different environments, and Susan runs analogs in a wide variety of different environments. And I think we could all learn from each other. So where I see it in the future, I mean, I would like to imagine a more collaborative approach where all analogs from different parts of the world can come together and share data for the wider, greater goal of preparing humanity into deep space, because ultimately that's what we're all doing it for. So why not collaborate more and come together, obviously where it's appropriate, but also bring some environment specific data collection experiments to different environments and see what we come up with. And then also going back to, share our knowledge. I think that they're all in different places around the world, but I think the more we share, the better, and the more we'll be able to come up with a more robust analog on all levels. So that's my thoughts for the future of analogs.
Yeah, those are good points to add on. Like we are all working for one common goal. So we are just like elevating each other when we're getting trained. And the future of analog would be, for me, it would come down to two things, which is research and funding. So are we doing all these analog trainings research based? Is it serious enough? So we need people who take this seriously. So it has to be research based, and that's why we have remote mission support teams where we can collect data. So we are learning. This is a very new field, honestly. So we need to learn from each other, which is where data collection becomes important. And the skill sets are very important too. So you just don't join an analog crew. You bring in your skill sets. You are a person who come with your skill sets and enhance it at the end of the training, right? So what skills do you bring in there? And as I would like to emphasize on having technical skill sets, because things always break down or go wrong during an analog mission, irrespective of where you're doing it. Extreme environments, low fidelity, or on an ocean, things will break out. You need to have the capability to handle them. So how well equipped are you to handle this? So for this, you don't have to come with a degree in engineering or technology. If you know how to do these things in general and willing to expand it, that's more than enough for you to talk about yourselves and as a person who can do all these analog trainings. So your skill set is very important. Either you need to have some or ready to enhance it. So that's one of the most important things. And funding part is much more important too. So I would like to tell all the analog environments around the world that we all need to come together and have more collaborations with each other, where we can bring in funding so that can help the next generation who wants to join these analog firms. So take me as an example. I did all the analog and trainings for free with a scholarship, because people are willing to fund students like me. And that's what I would like to also give it to the next generation. They need funding to come and join. That also comes with the caveat that you need to be super competitive. So work on yourself is, at the end of the day, it's like have more skill sets and work on yourself, and the opportunities will come at the right time for you. So that's my point here.
Thank you. Susan?
Yes, that's so important. I think paying it forward is always should be part of your motto as well, right? If you've been given scholarships, which we give a lot of scholarships under MMAARS, we only ask you to, yes, you learn, and now also be able to pay it forward and help others. Very much our vision is to not only, develop these opportunities for those who are interested in in space exploration, in all the other aspects of, not just being an astronaut, supporting space exploration is the DEIA, right? We're part of the SDG, the United Nations SDG, trying to bring in more communities, and definitely communities like next generation girls, women, to be able to have these opportunities. So I think that is one of the important goals of what we're trying to develop is opening up opportunities. So we work with organizations, nonprofit, academia, to bring in these communities. For example, Space Kids India, these rural village in India, we work with Space Kids India, give them the scholarships, give them the opportunities to engage in space exploration, in technology and R&D. So that is important. The other, I think, is important that we have built into our program, not only offering scholarships and fellowships, is that when you come into our program, you could see on our website, you can participate in our research. We have lots of research. In being part of our research, right, is giving you the capability of learning the skills, learning the knowledge in that particular research, and also you have the opportunity to co-author publication, to build your scientific portfolio on your resume. And then second, which is very, I think, unique to MMAARS, is we have an Astropreneur track, where not only are you able to build your scientific, resume as a publisher, co-author, a speaker, is then we help you to go and manifest your idea. If you bring in a research into our, missions, we'll help you to be able to transition out of the scientific realm into a business commercial realm as a startup company. I think that is a very unique pathway that is missing, and that is the future of where these analogs can go to be able to offer these opportunities, right? And so that, I think, is important. But the other, I think I'll end on this, is the technology. And so for us, I think, for example, incorporating AI into space medicine and space health. So one of the startup company that we have just got funded is FastX. It's the virtual astronaut simulator for drug discovery, for drug precision dosing in space. As we all know, that's important, right? And also being able to bring in AI as a technology to support the crew operation is something that we are absolutely now embarking on. We've published the work, we are going to present it, we are going to get funding. So that's something that you can also collaborate with us if you're interested. I think at the end of the day, yes, research funding to be able to develop technology, grants and so on is something that we are very heavily involved. So those grants allow us to offer the scholarships, to offer all these opportunities, but also I think the R&D technology, right, from investors, which we're heavily involved in, is the private sector, right, where you have companies like VAS, which is down the road from us, by the way, in Long Beach, in California. VAS, Axiom Space, these are going to replace the ISS, orbital reef, which is, supported by Jeff Bezos with the Blue Origin. So if you are interested in all these other opportunities, that's where analog, in terms of, analog astronautics opportunities in all these different entities, where I'm just talking about MMAARS right now, because we do offer all this. It's been part of our sort of our vision as we expanded, over the years. So it's not just about being an astronaut. It's not just about going into space. That is part of it, but it's a very small part, really, of why you want to go into the analog astronautics community, right?
Well, thank you very much for sharing. I don't know who wants to go next with their final thoughts for the audience. All right. I know we all don't want it to end, but someone does have to go next. So Amber, I'm going to go ahead and
I already knew it was going to be me. I understand Patrick's deep, sincere, like friendship that he has with me. So it's always, I'm just kidding. So
I just go alphabetically in my brain, and you have the A, so you
that
win.
is absolutely fine. So I guess final thoughts would be, if you're looking to compare analog missions and you're on your way to try to become a NASA astronaut or ESA astronaut or JAXA astronaut, look to analog astronaut programs just to test your skill. If you are looking to get into some other brackets and you feel after this conversation that analog astronaut may not just be your flex, then you can always contact one of us and find out where your ideal genre may be. Maybe it'll be in cybersecurity and technology like me, or maybe it'll be in oceaneering, oceanography or something like that. Or maybe it'll just be with support devices, building complex, equipment systems. Or if you want to get into something like artistry, that's another way to kind of lend your hand in the space exploration program. So there's something for everybody. And I think that that's one of the things that we want to definitely take away from this conversation, even though it was really significantly supporting analog astronauts and like how my own position was comparing it to the NASA astronauts and showing you how they're really one and the same. It's just that there's a different organization that hired you to get this thing done. You have a space in space. Just figure out where it is and let's go from there.
Yeah, wonderfully said. I want to continue saying that telling space is for everyone, and especially with missions like Artemis 2 and other private missions coming up, everyone can contribute in expanding human consciousness to this universe, right? And like everyone mentioned here already, there are so many resources, and we're going to put up a resource page for you, and we can just publish it outside so you can look into it and you can see where you fit yourselves into. We are here to help you. So this panel is to put out that people from various backgrounds come together to make this analog astronaut community. So because there is space for everyone here. So yeah, just reach out to us. And as a graduate student, I have been given the opportunity to contribute to a lot of space trainings, analog astronaut trainings, and I want to give back to this community as well. So I keep giving out resources for everyone, so feel free to reach out anytime. And those are my thoughts. Thank you.
I want to just my last words as well. Yes, I agree. It's been a really wonderful thing in participating and also working with Reed, running this analog, to realize how much diversity there is in space, and that space really is open to every single person. I mean, really what it is we're all humans. We're all going into space eventually. So why not work on that together, bring all of our different skills together to help make that happen and learn more from each other. And ultimately, if anybody listening here is interested in our analog or just analogs in general, you can always contact us. I'll link my LinkedIn here and our website. And then the bottom line that we want to leave you all with about analogs is, how honest are you able to be about yourself? And can you actually, when deciding to go on an analog or a space mission for that matter, do you actually believe that you can complete this, and why? And what can you, can you actually do it? Can you finish it from start to finish? Can you be a collaborative crew member? And can you set your own individual needs and discomforts aside to be part of a full unit going through with this mission? So that's what I wanted to leave with that.
I want to end with thank you so much, Patrick, for inviting me and this panel. It's been an amazing conversation, which is what I like. I don't like people just going into like showing slides. I just really, really enjoyed this, and it's great to meet everyone. And I wish I could meet everyone in the audience too. But I want to leave with this. So first of all, I want you, if you want to join an analog mission or any mission, first of all, look into your MTP, at least think about it, right? That's number one, your massive transformative purpose. That will be your North Star, at least a start to help you. And it's not just the analog, it's a blueprint of your life journey that you can map out. You need that as a guide. It's a guide, right? Secondly, is these analogs are really multidisciplinary. It's multinational. It's, everybody can join. Space is for all. I absolutely agree. And so it's multidisciplinary. So it doesn't matter what your background is. If you're a dancer, which Amber didn't know that, we actually have underwater choreography in our simulation, so it doesn't matter. Your artist, it doesn't matter. We want everyone to be part of this, no matter what your background is, right? And then I want to say, if you want to start, because I'm very practical, we actually have monthly virtual level 1. We're starting May, virtual level 1 with MMAARS next week, but we have one every month. So if you're interested to start this journey, come into our virtual analog astronaut and reach out. I've already got my LinkedIn there and also our webpage, and start your journey. Nothing to lose, more to gain, and also you connect with some amazing people in this. And as you already could see, right, we got some amazing people in the analog astronaut community. But our goal is to be able to make this into an actual accepted field. That's what my goal has always been. It's not just, space camp or cosplaying, right? So that's kind of where I want to leave you all. I want to be able to say thank you. And my goal is to inspire the next generation, because, I saw Neil Armstrong when I was a little girl step on the moon, and it was like, 50 odd years ago. And now I want to be able to see the next generation, literally, which I could see, we'll have human boots on the moon by 2030. I'm so excited. And then maybe, I won't be alive to see that, or who knows, of longevity research, right? To actually see humans on Mars, which is something I'm so inspired about. I've been inspired since I was a little kid, and this has been part of my DNA, and everyone here is so inspiring too. And I want to see it happen. So be part of it. It's an amazing journey. It's an amazing journey for our humanity. It's what I want to leave with you all with. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you all so much to all of the panelists who participated. It's not possible to thank you for your time and your insights. This is one of the longest virtual events we have ever run. We could have gone for another hour and a half. I am perfectly convinced we could have gone for another hour and a half. I have a whole bunch of other questions that I wanted to ask that came up throughout the thing. We didn't get a chance to do it. So I do just want to end with this. This conversation will be ongoing. I think the people who participated in the planning of this call had a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of really interesting dynamics that come with this conversation, because analogs, and that's what I've kind of learned planning this, they touch on so many different aspects of not only just space travel, but our shared humanity. Who are we? What are we doing here? Where are we going? How do we find truth about ourselves, truth about other people? And I think to kind of tie it into New York, I think New York is a place where we bring all these threads together. New York does that already anyways. Brings people from around the world, all sorts of different backgrounds and perspectives and visions for the future. It brings them all together in this place where everyone just kind of lives, works together, learns. And I think that is a place where we can start to have some of these broader conversations about, analogs. What is the industry going to look like in the future? How do we bring these people together to talk about new standards or new programs to support the next generation and everything like that? So we were absolutely honored to host you all today. This was an absolutely thrilling conversation. I can do that. It took me years to be able to train my fingers to do this as a kid, but now I can do it. It's really cool. So yeah, it was an absolutely amazing conversation. We want to thank everyone who joined and supported the call. There was a lot of interest. This will be posted on YouTube afterwards, so attendees and everything. We will work on it. I like the idea that came up about like a one-pager, like a handy analog guide. We can definitely as a group put that together and send it out to the attendees. So the work will continue, and we'll probably have more public conversations about this in the future. So yeah, just from the Empire Space team and the New York Space ecosystem, just wanted to say thank you so very much to all of our expert panelists for sharing their time and their insights with us. And we hope you all have a fantastic day.
Live long and prosper.
Live
Take
long and
care,
prosper.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.